And welcome to Icons of the Dragon Ball community, as I speak to individuals who I feel are an important part of contributing positively to the Dragon Ball community. And joining me on this edition, a man who, if you are familiar with informational Dragon Ball videos, if you're familiar with well-researched videos, and if you're familiar with my channel, you know who this man is. On his way to becoming a YouTube legend, please welcome Blackenfist.
Well, I do hope that I become a YouTube legend. That still, I think, remains to be seen.
I think it'll happen, though. I think it'll happen. You're on your way. So, welcome. First of all, thank you for being on this thing, man. I really, really appreciate it.
It's no problem. No problem.
I know you meticulously edit each and every one of your videos, so to take time away from doing that means a lot to me. I wanted to talk to you primarily because you gotta getting to know Blackenfist as a man, but also kind of your history with Dragon Ball. And the thing about your channel, Juan, Blackenfist, excuse me, is that and first of all, I will put a link in the description below to go check out Blackenfist's channel. Is that, you know, one of the things about your channel is it's the Blackenfist HQ, Dragon Ball, and TOONAMI. So I want to talk about TOONAMI. I want to reminisce on that era. I want to reminisce on a very young Blackenfist getting into Dragon Ball, loving Dragon Ball, because you are one of the guys who genuinely has an affection bordering on damn near obsession with Dragon Ball.
That is definitely not just like bordering obsession. I think at this point it is an obsession. That's no question.
It is, and you're such a dude. You are, and people might not know this, but you're such a staunch defender of the series. You know, people will criticize Super. You'll be like, you know what, I'm digging it, and it's just you just love Dragon Ball. But I wanted to talk to you about that. Now, a lot of people are under the assumption that you got into Dragon Ball because of TOONAMI, because you talk a lot about TOONAMI, and I want to get to that here in the conversation. But I found out a little secret about you. And you actually saw Dragon Ball, very small glimpse of it, before TOONAMI.
Well, I don't think I don't think you could say it was before TOONAMI, but I was exposed to, you could say, a non-TOONAMI broadcast, and the first time I was exposed to Dragon Ball anything, it didn't have anything to do with TOONAMI. So, but I do believe that, you know, I'm a younger guy, so I do believe that was still around. It had to have been around 1999. So, you know, that was still around the TOONAMI boom, even though it wasn't. Even though when I first saw it, it had nothing to do with TOONAMI.
Well, what was the story behind that?
Well, I was actually not with my first exposure to the, of course, the most popular section, Dragon Ball Z, was actually not to even the English dub. It was actually the Spanish dub, the Mexican version, and that was because when I went over to visit, I just
you just gave away your ethnicity, bro.
Yeah, I know, but still, trust me, people will still ask away. Trust me.
Oh,
but anyway, when I was over there, I pretty much was first exposed over there, but I was not really into it. I remember seeing it, and I just remember seeing it as this weird show, but at the time, I really had no interest. It was the TOONAMI broadcast that really brought me into the fold, you could say. Even though I was exposed to it before, it was the TOONAMI broadcast stuff, the TOONAMI stuff that really got me into the series.
What was it about Dragon Ball Z? And we'll talk about Dragon Ball too, because you are a very staunch defender of Dragon Ball as well. What was it about Dragon Ball Z that got you hooked? And do you remember when you actually knew that you were becoming a fan, like really becoming a fan?
That's actually pretty easy for me. Believe it or not, I actually got into the series at the GARLIC JR Saga. At the time, yeah, I know. At the time, TOONAMI was running an all-day marathon of the GARLIC JR Saga, and I was already a viewer of Cartoon Network. So when I tuned in, this weird show was on. So I just started watching it, and I mean, and because it was a marathon, it was episode and after episode after episode, and I could slowly get into the drama of the show. Now, of course, it was just something to watch at first, but as the stakes kept getting higher. I remember one image that's burned into my head like ever since is that image of Kami and Mr. Popo running through that whatever multiple times, recycling that same animation and bumping into that invisible
Worst
wall.
part about that saga, if you ask
Yeah,
me.
well, you know what? When you're a kid, you just sort of kind of excuse that kind of stuff. But, I just remember seeing this stuff, this like action cartoon thing that I've never seen before. And I remember slowly and more getting more into the drama and more into the stakes. I remember when Garlic Jr. transformed and then he opens up the dead zone and then Gohan protects everybody. I so when I first started watching that whole marathon, I was like, let's see what this is about and whatever. And it was just something to watch. By the end of the Garlic Jr. saga, however, when I saw Gohan repeal Garlic Jr. back to the dead zone, I was completely hooked. I was sold. And I think this saga has to do with the well, it also has a lot to do with the Cell Saga as well, but I think this saga in particular also might have started my love for Gohan later on.
I was gonna
Because
ask you about that because you made no bones about it. He is your favorite character.
yeah, he is my favorite character, and ever since the beginning, that's kind of the character I was just naturally rooting for. I think it's because he's just a very easy to character to root for when you're also a kid yourself, and Gohan's also a kid, very easy to relate to. But then when you see him start to do all these things and become the central like focus, the focal point to everything, and really be the one to pretty much save the day. That really just hooked me into the show. And by the end of the Garlic Jr. saga, you could say that I don't know, maybe you could say I was already a fan by that point, because if you define a fan by someone who just wants to watch this show, then I definitely, after watching the Garlic Jr. saga, I definitely wanted to watch the show. And of course, after that, I went right into the Cell saga and all that, the Cell arc. And the one moment that just I guess you could say the day, I mean, you could say that it was my the precursors were already there when I saw the Garlic Jr. saga, but when it was solidified, you could say my Dragon Ball fandom, my Dragon Ball obsession was solidified, was when, of course, when Gohan turns into a Super Saiyan 2. And when I saw that scene and I saw that whole arc, Gohan fighting Cell, beating him, I said, Gohan's my favorite character, and this is my favorite show of all time. And it's pretty much almost more than 10 years later, and those things are still true.
It's become, I almost feel like with all of us, and I mean, I'm including myself, I'm including QAAMAN, Mike Labrie, everybody who's going to be on this thing, it's almost become like a genuine part of our life. I mean, in Mike Labrie's case, he met his wife through this thing. Dragon Ball is responsible for him getting married in a roundabout way. There's nothing greater than that. So you're telling me that you're probably going to watch this show in one form or another until you're an old man.
Well, I'm still a young guy, and I understand that life changes. But let's just say in the foreseeable future, Dragon Ball is definitely, it's been a part of my life to this point, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
So after you watched Garlic Jr., you said you moved on to the Android Artificial Human Cell arc. Did you at any point during this seek out the previous episodes, like through VHS tapes, DVDs, or online? Like, where did this really like seeking it out stuff start?
For a couple years, Toonami was my only exposure to Dragon Ball, and of course, I continued to follow it. Of course, when the Boo arc came out, I continued to watch it there. Of course, Dragon Ball started airing on Toonami as well, and of course, I fell in love with that show as well. Of course, at that point, I didn't really know what it was. At the time, I felt Dragon Ball, as a viewer of Toonami, Dragon Ball came off more of as a spin-off series, even though it wasn't. But the way it came off was like a spin-off series, because,
like a prequel, right?
Well, yeah, like a prequel, but like a spin-off series. Like, like a lot of cartoons do that, where it's like, here's the Looney Tunes and here's the Looney Tunes babies, or like, here are the Tom and Jerry kids. You know what I mean? That, like a spin-off series, or like, here's Scooby-Doo when
A
they're
pup
kids.
named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, here's Scooby-Doo when they're kids. And Dragon Ball came off like that. It came off as like that spin-off series where they just, regress the characters' ages. And that's how it came off. It didn't really came off as a prequel series. Of course, I later learned that later on. But as a viewer of Toonami, this is the way the impression I got was that this was more of a spin-off series. But I still liked it. It was still Dragon Ball. And of course, Toonami really was my only exposure, and I really never suck out another way to consume Dragon Ball. It was just Toonami for a couple years. So I remember it was like a drought. I almost call it like the Dragon Ball drought, because when Dragon Ball stopped airing on Toonami, of course, because when it finally ended, and GT was airing at this point. But the thing is, GT aired really late night, so I was not able to catch every single episode that aired. Maybe that was a good thing, but
we'll find out soon, I guess.
Yeah, we'll find out soon. But around this point, I really didn't have any exposure to Dragon Ball. It was a period from like 2004 to like 2007. Almost 3 years where my only exposure to Dragon Ball at this point was like the video games. I never saw any Dragon Ball during this point in the show. And
what about like the internet, like KANZENSHUU?
No, I'll get to that, because as I said before, I'm a younger guy, so I was a lot more ignorant of the internet and the internet community and the fandom that's out there.
That might be a good thing. But go ahead.
Some of that is a good thing. But I was you could say I was very close, like slow to catch this on. I mean, I only found KANZENSHUU very late in its life. I think I only found it in like 2009 and 10. So, I'm a guy who took the internet stuff very much later in my fandom. I was much more isolated in my fandom, which is actually a good thing, because in some ways, because I guess I wasn't tainted by other people's by what other people think. Like, I think the one that prominently sticks out to me is that everyone thinks Chi-Chi is annoying and she's a bitch or whatever, the internet might want to say about her. But I never thought that about Chi-Chi. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't think that on my own if I was exposed to the internet fandom. So I do feel that I think that being isolated and just being around my own thoughts helped me perceive the series in a very unique way, and that's actually and that's one of the upsides to watching Dragon Ball in just that isolated way that probably doesn't exist anymore because we have the internet and we just can't stop using it. But
and it brings up a good point. People complain about Super and Juan Blackenfist.
You can call me whatever, man.
All right, bro. The thing is, because we're having a conversation, one thing that I think you will agree with me on is that episode 5 of Super Debacle, you and I both know that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z had their moments of bad animation.
Yes.
And as a result of that stupid episode 5, now everybody likes to watch Super with a fucking magnifying glass. They pause at moments that nobody would ever notice if it wasn't for episode 5, and they say, look, it's bad animation, bad animation, bad animation. And I think that's because of the fact that it blew up on the internet. Because I think if we were all watching Super in our own homes, not really communicating with each other, maybe just our own circle of friends, I don't think it would be that big of a deal, man.
Well, you know what I mean? No, I actually agree with you, but I do feel that in some ways, animation standards have gotten better, and the episode 5 stuff, now there's no doubt, we all know about the bad animation days that Dragon Ball has had in the past. No doubt about it. Anyone who's been watching the Dragon Ball anime or the animes for years notices how characters slightly look different from episode to episode. Some art is better than others, but the fact that, just to think that back then at least they all were doing it hand drawn, and now they got, or at least they can use the help of computers. I feel like sometimes there's less excuses, but who knows, I understand Dragon Ball is always going to have a bad animation day.
Always. And the thing is, though, back then it did feel more natural.
I think the reason it felt more natural is because of those animation standards, and they were drawing it all by hand. Now it's like they got help from computers and everything, so the excuses are not as great.
Now, one of the things that you have said, you and I have talked a few times, a lot actually, since I've known you here for about 3 months, gotten to know you pretty well. And one of the points that you made to me that kind of raised an eyebrow was about this very thing. You had told me once that you're actually kind of thankful that you got into Dragon Ball through Toonami because you feel like if you had gotten into it in the pre-Toonami generation, which is, the I guess the syndication / Japanese tape trading era that I'm from, that maybe you would have a different opinion about certain aspects of the show, namely the score. Now, you've told me in the past that you interviewed Bruce Falconer. There is an interview on Blackenfist channel. I'm going to put the link to his channel below. Go check it out. You have said to me before that you are a fan of both Falconer and Kikuchi, but you feel like it's a possibility that if you had gotten into the show prior to Falconer and you were one of those guys like me who was tape trading and kind of Japanese centric, you've said something to the effect of that maybe you wouldn't have been able to appreciate Falconer because you would have been kind of, I guess, impressioned, or what's the word, like, you know what I mean, I guess manipulative.
Yeah, we just hate things that change, but
impressionable.
By no means, we have had conversations like that, and I want to say that I think Kikuchi's better, but no, I am actually very grateful for the way I got into the series, and the reason, like I said before, my fandom was very isolated for years. Now, like I guess I could continue with the story. I was very isolated for years, and I only got exposed to the internet side of the fandom in like 2008 and 9, really, and during that point, that's when I started to seek out trying to rewatch during those years, because of course I was watching it on TV. I never got to see everything, and during those like 2007 through 10, you could say, I was trying to watch everything that I missed. But over the years, I've met some fans, very interesting people in the fandom, such as yourself, Mr. Fusion Gaffer Tape. I've gotten to see just amazing, probably the most reliable website, KANZENSHUU. It wasn't KANZENSHUU when I found it, was DaiZenshu. And of course, there's Mike Labrie on there. And the same story that I keep hearing from guys like the older fans, like Mr. Fusion, you, and the guys who run KANZENSHUU, is that they didn't like when Funimation started to do their own in-house dubbing, and I could understand some of that stuff
initially.
Is pretty bad. Yeah, some of that stuff is pretty bad, and as a fan of Funimation's cast and even Bruce Falconer's soundtrack, I can say that the quality wasn't there. But I was grateful for the way I got into it, because I don't know. I'm just saying this maybe because I just feel like this is the way I see everyone else who's a fan, like yourself and people like that. Is that I feel they would be a fan of exclusively that, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But the thing is, what I think is awesome about the way I got into it is because I loved Dragon Ball so much. And I was watching it in like the English Funimation dub, the in-house dub, not the
the Chris Sabat era.
For years. But see, the thing is, my love for Dragon Ball continued on so much that I wanted to see a lot of other things, and I wanted to hear a lot of other things, and that's how I went to the Japanese. Now, the whole thing about me going into the Japanese is another story, and it wasn't something that I got into immediately, because we can go into a lot of things. The music's so different. Goku's voice is very startling to hear for the first time.
Yes, it is.
And it was something that I had to gradually get used to. But I remember you said to me that, oh, well, you think, I remember you told me that I'm just an open-minded person, and that's why I was open to listening to the Japanese and enjoy it eventually.
Yes,
but I actually disagree. I actually disagree, because I don't think it was that I was open-minded. I was quite repulsed initially by a lot of the things that I heard in the Japanese. And quite honestly, if I didn't, and I think it comes down to one thing. The only thing that kept me watching the things I was watching in Japanese and with Kikuchi's soundtrack, which I now think is pretty much the definitive soundtrack, the only thing that kept me watching is not my open-mindedness or having an open mind. It was simply my love of Dragon Ball, the fact that this was Dragon Ball, that I
Man, I
was
feel
able
that
to.
right now, bro. I'm feeling it. Go ahead. I'm
It
sorry.
it was the fact that it was Dragon Ball, and the fact that, yes, I was repulsed by a couple things. I did feel that uh Nozawa's voice was a bit annoying, and initially I did feel repulsed by it, but eventually I adapted and I started to enjoy it, and it was like an acquired taste. It wasn't something that I was like, I'm just gonna try to like this. No, I was like, I got through my initial phase of like, oh, this is so different, and Nozawa's voice is weird, to the point where, like, Nozawa is actually pretty badass in some of the things she does in the series, and Kikuchi just nails it out of the park. And I got that way because of my constant, just how much I like this series and how much I want to just take in everything Dragon Ball related. And I feel that if I got into the series the other way, with initially with Nozawa and Kikuchi, how willing I don't see, the thing is, maybe I still would be willing to listen to Falconer, but the thing is, would I be willing? I think it's actually a lot easier, and this is just the way I feel, and the way I've talked to a lot of fans who were first exposed to the English dub and Bruce Falconer and everything. Now, of course, I'm not talking about all fans. I'm talking about only a very select few of fans here. Okay,
Yeah.
I have heard of what they've said, and a lot of them that truly like Dragon Ball, they do go to the Japanese. They do go to Kikuchi. They do go to all that, and I do see them transfer over. I don't see a lot going the other way around, and I can understand that, because to them it's an inferior version. So I can understand why they're doing that, but I think that's the reason why I'm glad the way I got into the series the way I did, because I was able to take in a lot more Dragon Ball related things the way I did, which I don't think I would be able, or maybe I would. Maybe that's just the way I'm as a person I am. But I don't think that it's as likely that I would have transitioned over if I started with Kikuchi and the Japanese first.
Well, there's actually a funny kind of irony to that I'm going to get to, but the thing with me, just to kind of compliment what you're saying, is that I can't speak for Lance or any of these guys, but I've read some of the comments from this generation. We rejected the changes because we felt the script changes were bad, and we love Kikuchi's score. However, since knowing you have kind of given me a crash course on some Bruce Falconer jingles. Now, I heard the Bruce Falconer score. I watched it on Toonami just like you. I did watch it, and I've said the story before. I watched it because I had tapes from Japan, but I did not have the whole series, so I had to watch the episodes that filled in the blanks in between my fan subs. And I remember really hating the Falconer themes. This was back when I was like a teenager. And then you sent me a few of the songs recently. You said, listen to this. And I was like, these are pretty good songs. The Imperfect Cell song was fantastic. The that World song, I think it's called
The Earth.
The
The
Earth
thing.
song. Yeah, and I'm like, this guy, he's got good music. Like, to me, it's my opinion, it is more fitting for like video games, but there are some good Bruce Falconer songs. To me, I actually think they sound better when you listen to them outside of Dragon Ball than they do within the context of the show. But what's funny about this whole thing that you're talking about is that now we have, so here's what's funny about the world. Back then, our generation rejected Falconer, and it's to the point where if you were around back then, there were anti-dub websites everywhere.
This is I mean, I've heard about this time period, from guys like you and from Kanzenshu and stuff like that. But back in the day, this was completely alien to me, because back in the day, as I said before, I was in a very isolated for years and years, and my only exposure was just Toonami, and eventually just watching the episodes online. But interacting with other people was very alien to me until very recently in my fandom, really.
No, but what's funny, right? What makes me smile about your fandom and my fandom is that we, and like DBZ Uncut, we were discovering all these edits that were made for the Ocean dub, all the blood episodes being cut out, all this stuff that we hated because we didn't want to be treated like children. We wanted to be respected. We wanted to see the uncut Dragon Ball Z, all the blood, all the cursing, all the violence, all that stuff.
Trust me, even I definitely would have wanted to see that too. And uh,
No,
seeing
but
it uncut is definitely the only way to see it for any fan, I think.
yeah, but what's funny is that now, in as of our recording, the paradigm has shifted because now we have another generation who is growing up on Kai, and now we have your generation, not you in particular, but a lot of people from your generation, from the Dragon Ball Z Toonami Bruce Falconer generation, who have rejected Kai because it's the fillers out. Bruce is not there. Colleen Clinkenbeard is doing Gohan. All these things, right? And it's hilarious to me that now you have taken our place. Not you, but I mean your generation has taken our place in telling these kids, no, 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 no. That's not Dragon Ball. Kai is not Dragon Ball. Z is Dragon Ball. But then you've got like people from my generation who are like, wait a minute. Kai is a much better dub. The script is better. The voices are better performed. Sabit and Schemmel are a lot better at voice acting. Chris Ayres is a much better Frieza. So it's almost become this like whirlwind of just back and forth, what's better, this, that. And then you got kids growing up on the Nickelodeon Kai thinking that Mr. Popo's blue. Dude, and the whole purpose of these videos and what we do is to get everybody together and say, listen, it doesn't matter what version you watch. If you are a real, in my opinion, I'm going to ask you this too. If you're a real fan of Dragon Ball, you'll watch it however you can. You'll watch Kai if you have time. You'll watch Super in Japanese. I had one guy tell me, I won't watch Super subbed. I will not watch it subbed. I'm going to wait for the dub. And I'm like, well, you're not a real fan. Because if you're a real fucking fan, bro, you can't wait for the dub. You want to see it now.
Exactly.
And why do you want to see it now? Because back then, when we were growing up on this fucking show, we didn't have all the episodes. We'd go to the Namek saga with Goku fighting Raccoon, and then it would stop, and we're back to Radix for a year. It felt like 10 years, but it was only about 2. And then we got the Frieza saga. And we're going to talk about Toonami here in a minute. Then we got the Cell saga. Then we got the Boo saga. Okay, finally we're seeing the show. We couldn't wait, bro. And these people are so, like, not hardcore if they're going to sit there and say, I'll wait for the dub. Dude, Quan, Blackenfist, whatever the fuck. Dude, I swear to God, bro, I have spent probably thousands of dollars on this show, bro. I bought tapes, I bought DVDs, I have spent on the same fucking episodes because of this fucking obsession, man. It's crazy.
No, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, the whole like Kai thing now and the voices.
No. I definitely. I mean, yeah, I see people, bashing Kai all the time and everything, and I definitely think that there's, of course, I guess you could say some of the people from now my generation rejecting it, and that's pretty obvious. Now, the reasons why I don't prefer Kai is, it's kind of funny that I don't prefer Kai. Now, of course, I think that Kai is obviously the better acted, and the script is more accurate, and Chris Ayres is better.
Yeah.
But for me, watching Kai, and by the way, I just want to preface everything that I didn't even watch the English dub of Kai. All of what I've watched of Kai was from the Japanese side of things.
Yes.
And to me, you could call me, the way I am is kind of I don't know what you could say, a completionist, right?
Yeah.
And the way the way I feel about Kai is that it's just a chopped up version of Z. And to me, it's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess it's more accurate to the manga. But if I really wanted the manga, I'd go read the manga. And if I wanted the anime, I want to get the full anime experience.
You want the filler.
Yeah. You know what? As funny as it is to say that, I want the filler because I want to know that everything is there, that I'm seeing everything that it has to offer.
Well, you and I have talked about how there's a lot of really good filler, bro.
Filler is you could, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna probably be making videos about this, but filler is something that actually gets me a little ticked off because although there is bad filler, there is a lot of filler that I did enjoy in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. And I feel that that's just overlooked because, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes this fandom is it just goes on memes that sometimes aren't as accurate as they, You
Hell
know
no.
the
Oh my God.
misinformation that's
The
out
red
there.
versus blue one recently that you commented
Yeah.
on. Yeah, that oh
Yes.
my God.
And I do feel that filler, although there is bad filler, it sometimes I feel that people don't quite to just sit back and actually analyze what was actually filler in the actual series and whether or not it was a pile of shit like a lot of fans will purport to tell you.
Yeah, and it's like we have like stuff like the fake Namek and all that, but then we have stuff like Gohan's. I love the Gohan filler. Some of my favorite,
Oh,
most emotional episodes they've ever put together.
Oh, my favorite training sequence in the entire series is mostly filler, and that was when Goku was up on Kami's lookout to train with Mr. Popo. Now I know that that's not 100% filler, but that was like what 60-70% filler.
Hell yeah, but
Filler. Listen to me.
Time travel, it was beautiful.
That filler, that training sequence. Listen, this is kind of weird because this is once again coming from the perspective of a fan who's seen Z. Who, of course, when I was seeing these episodes, I already had seen Z, so I already
knew he had a son. He grew up.
So,
all that shit.
Yeah, I already knew what type of fighter Goku was going to be. I already knew how strong the man was going to get. So when I was watching Dragon Ball and all that stuff, you kind of like, as a fan who knows all this stuff, you're kind of wondering, when is it that Goku, you see Goku, you start to see the inklings of how strong Goku's going to get, how he's the inklings of what kind of fighter he's going to be, what type of man he's going to be in terms of fighting. And I really got that when I saw that training sequence. When I saw that training sequence, it's like Goku deserves to be the strongest. I never felt like this until I saw this. Goku deserves to be that strong the way he is in all of Z because of this training. It's so special. I think it's so unique. Some of that training is, quite honestly, you never see in the series ever again. It's a lot of it's
so
spiritual and mental. But later on, training just becomes like training here for a year and you're going to become stronger. So when I saw that training, I felt like this training really is like a core development for Goku, and I feel like he deserved every bit of strength that you see him in the beginning of Z. He completely earned it, and that's the way I felt when I saw that training sequence, which I think, and most of that was filler.
And that's the thing. It's so well written because, Toriyama obviously wrote a great story. No matter what anybody says about Toriyama and his, how he became later on, Dragon Ball before Z was a lot more tight as far as plot holes and things like that go. Much better written, if you ask me. But you got to give credit to Minoru Okazaki and like the people in charge of the anime, because that was not Toriyama. Just such good stuff, man. And it even brings me to the whole like Gohan's training thing. How the episodes where Gohan is defending the dinosaur. And when the episode, one of the most popular episodes in Latin America is the one with the robot, dude. When I was in high school, there was this Honduran kid who had all the Spanish dubbed episodes, and he would always talk about the fucking Mr. Robot episode, Desert of Vanishing Tears. I run into Sol Nova on Twitter, and dude, that episode is like iconic in Mexico. And it's filler.
Yeah, one of my favorite filler scenes in that whole little arc there is when Gohan actually goes back to his house.
That's
and
like the
chooses.
best, dude.
I think that just shows how powerful, how committed Gohan is. The fact that he went back to his house,
dude,
and he chose to go back to train. He chose to still keep up with what he was going for. And I felt that, first of all, that gave, I think, Gohan more development. It showed a bit of Gohan's character there. And just that, the fact that Gohan actually had a choice and he was not forced into this. And that completely changed the entire dynamics, I think, for the better, because without that scene, it just seems like, okay, well, Gohan went through all these tough times, but he was kind of forced into it. That scene made it completely to where it was Gohan's choice to be there.
The filler enhanced the story. In that example.
In that example, yes.
Yeah, and a lot of people criticize also the one where the Z fighters go back in time to fight the old Planet Vegeta inhabitants, and people are, oh well, it's filler, but no, like the fact that they went back in time and got their asses kicked by people weaker than Vegeta and Nappa. Okay, we gotta take this shit seriously. Like I love that. Like it just added to the story. I love that filler. I really I can and you know what? That's one thing that Z does have over Kai is those special character building moments. So
Well,
go
well,
ahead.
like well, it's kind of like what I said before. With Kai, it's like if I want a cut down version of the show or of the anime, I'd just rather we read the
Read the
manga
manga, yeah.
because the manga's better than that anyway. So, just read the manga, and because if I really want to watch the anime, like I said before, I want to watch it all.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about me, and I've said this before, is I always watch it in Japanese, always, 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 always. If I'm going to watch it dubbed, I will watch Kai because it has significantly less script changes than Z, about 90% accurate, 95% accurate to the Japanese. But otherwise, there's not really a reason to watch Kai. But what's interesting about your journey through this Dragon Ball growth, bro, is that we have our buddy Super JAYAIN who pretty much went through every phase. Like, he started as a Bruce Falconer Toonami fan, then he became this like Kai elitist, and he kind of still is, and now he's starting to watch Z in Japanese, and every single day he hits me up. Every day he's like, dude, I'm loving it, I'm learning things I never knew before about the series, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, man, it's just he's actually going backwards. It's weird.
Yeah, but like I said before, he started off in that, Jay is another example of these fans that I was talking about
It's
earlier
the
about
love of Dragon Ball.
exactly, who started off as a Bruce Falconer fan and then just went all over the place in terms of what they get into. And Jay is another example of that, and that's kind of what I was talking about. That's kind of why I'm glad I got into the series the way I did.
Now, I'm going to talk to you about Toonami here in a minute, but before we do, I wanted to ask you, we talked about this off air, and I want to really bring it up here. This Dragon Ball fan base, there's all kinds of different fans, and one thing that you had kind of preached to me that I think you were spot on about is about the division line between fans. And I'm not talking about sub versus dub or Kai versus Z. I'm talking about
there's a bunch of divisions in the fandom.
There is, and I want to ask you, because I really got to figure this out, man. I'm still kind of figuring it out and just get your thoughts on it. There are certain Dragon Ball fans that view the series different than we do. And I don't know if they're casual fans or not, but you've got the fans who like obsess over Broly, obsess over Fusion, obsess over who's stronger than who. And I almost feel like, even though there's a lot of them, I feel like they fail to miss the point about what Dragon Ball is. And why do you think, in your opinion, what contributed to these fans? Is it just them watching the series dubbed and not really understanding the whole picture? Maybe they never watched Dragon Ball, so they didn't see where the roots of the show came from. They never read the manga. What is, like, these fans that I don't have any problem against them, but they're different than we are. Where did they come from? Where is this coming from?
Well, that's a very hard thing to pinpoint, but, being around the fandom a lot, like I said before, I was exposed to other fans late, I guess, in the time I was into Dragon Ball.
And I think that did help you. I really do.
Yeah. But the thing is, when I did get exposed to other fans, I quickly started realizing that the way that the series, this whole franchise, is interpreted and perceived by different people is very different. I mean, some people,
fascinating, dude.
Like some people like perceive it as, oh, it's a Toriyama thing where he was a gag manga artist and he put in some kung fu action in. But he was lighthearted all throughout, even when it gets a little darker. Some other people interpret it, oh, it's an action show
Absalon.
with big explosions and pretty much, ki blasts all going all over the place. So I started noticing that, yeah, this show is perceived a lot very differently by different people. But I kind of feel it Dragon Ball almost is like it almost Dragon Ball is one of those shows that is very easy for that to happen to a lot of people because it is so different in so many parts of the series. If you really think about it, if you think about how much Dragon Ball has changed in terms of its in terms of the tone that it's taken and some of the different story turns and twists, it's changed a lot if you look at from the beginning to the end. So maybe the reason that it's perceived so differently by a lot of people is because some people I think, who watch the whole thing and are consumed the whole series will obviously have a different perception of Dragon Ball
Yeah.
that just watch Z. Now, I think
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
I think that's a big difference. If you just want, and to me, to me, it's like it almost feels sometimes that a Dragon Ball Z fan is almost like,
Not a
it's
Dragon
very
Ball fan.
well, it's very, it's very cynical and elitist to say that. I guess in a more I guess not as a not mean way to say it is that, a Dragon Ball Z fan, I almost feel, and a Dragon Ball fan, the way I am and you are, and Jay is, they're just two different fans. It almost feels like it sometimes. Like Dragon Ball Z to me, like, is a part of Dragon Ball, but it's not everything. But to them, that is everything. You know what I mean? And I feel that's where I think now that's not just that. I don't think that's where everything, all the the different perceptions originate. But I do feel that the majority of this whole, how people perceive an obsession over power levels and strength and Broly and stuff like that is just the fact that the fans that take the time to pretty much see everything and consume Dragon Ball, or at least get it or read the manga or something. It's a
different tier. I mean, I don't want to come off elitist, but it is a different tier.
Well, it's
right?
not. I think of it differently. If you're a fan who consumes it all, you're obviously going to have a different perspective. But if you're just a fan, like, let's say some people are just fans of like a number 2 in a series, you know what I mean? And they're just fans of that particular movie, not the whole franchise. And that's how I feel like the Dragon Ball Z fans are. They're just a fan of that particular part of the story, and that's where they want to stay. That, I have no problem against that. I mean, I think most fans were there at one point, but
to me, let me just say this. To me, and this is going to sound a little bit purist, but I'm going to tell the truth. If you're intending on being a fan of Dragon Ball, that's great. I just feel like if you want a fellowship with people like you, me, and Mike Labrie and all of us, I feel like you almost would have to broaden your horizons. And it's very hard. And I think you've admitted this to me. It's hard to talk to these people because a lot of them are set in their ways. They believe a certain thing. They believe everything they read. And to me, I think it's a failure of two things. Number one, digesting multiple aspects of the series. And number two, understanding Toriyama. Because if you really understand Toriyama, you'll understand that Dragon Ball is basically a comedy with some action that has some action and comedy, but it really is at the root a gag manga, or a gag story that does get darker as time progresses. That's how I've always felt about it, And let me ask you a question.
It doesn't help that Toriyama is also a very private person, and the fact that he's a private person only adds fuel to this because he doesn't do well. I mean, I guess he has done a lot of interviews, but there's not a lot of video interviews of him. That he doesn't speak a lot. So the fact that he doesn't do it, he's not very public and he's not out there a lot. That just gives license for the fan base.
Well, one of my favorite,
some of the fans to just say Toriyama did this and Toriyama thinks that,
and they don't know. They have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is that one of my favorite videos you ever did was the one where you debunked that 200 episodes new series rumor. When you basically said in the video, you're like, "Yeah, Toriyama doesn't do press conferences," and I'm like, "No, he doesn't. This is perfect. This is exactly right." I watched that before I even knew you. Let me ask you this. How important is it, in your opinion, for a fan of Dragon Ball Z to go back and watch Dragon Ball? Is it crucially important to you?
I don't see. The thing is, I don't think so. I mean, listen, if you're a fan of just Dragon Ball Z and you're fine with it and you like dabble into like what happened before and you don't like it, I don't feel like you should be obligated to see the whole thing. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's what I mean. They're just fans of, and that's something that I've seen over the years. They're just fans of Z and they're probably not interested in terms. They're not interested in what happened before. They're only interested as a backstory of Z. They're just like, oh, that's the backstory of Z, and that's as far as and
that's false because it's not the backstory. Well, it's the first half of the story. That's the wrong way to look at it.
Well, yeah, but that's
you look at the intentions.
As far as that's the thing. But I mean, like, I'm not one of these fans, so I would imagine they would just be like, Z is where I'm content to be, and if they are, then I guess that's where they're just gonna be. But and that's just how I view it. Like, if they're content to be, I think that I think some people might get some more out of the series by watching everything. But
Yeah.
like I said before, because the series is so different and the series has changed a lot. If you look at it, not just in artwork, because artwork is another thing that Toriyama did change throughout the entire series. If you look at the manga, his artwork did change, but also maybe with so many different characters have been used throughout the series, so the character cast is very different from the beginning to the end. I mean, Goku and Bulma might be the only constants throughout the whole thing. So characters, the development, the fact that everyone's a lot younger provides a slightly different tone to everything, that everyone's much younger than in Z. The fact that everything's so different, I do feel that kind of blocks, I don't know how you would say, that kind of blocks some people from watching it because it's so different from what they're used to in Z. But it also might, for some of those people, it might add something to the series because you're going to be seeing more of what it has to offer.
Yeah, but to me, man, in my opinion, you're missing half the story. Honestly, you really are.
Well, I feel the same way, but
Yeah. Now I want to talk about, what else did you watch on Toonami that you remember?
Well, I actually was like a Toonami guy back in the day, man. Obviously Dragon Ball Z was the biggest thing, and when Dragon Ball came on, I watched that. I watched Outlaw Star. I watched some of Yu Yu Hakusho. I remember watching Rurouni Kenshin. All the classic stuff. I watched a little bit of Gundam Wing. Shoot, what was some of the other stuff that was on there that I remember?
Did you watch like Johnny Quest or any of that stuff?
The thing is, I was kind of you're a kid, so when I did watch Johnny Quest, the old one, and the thing is, when that stuff, I remember there was also a new one that was on there too.
Yeah, the new one's one that was on after Dragon Ball.
Yeah, that one I watched as well. I honestly didn't. I didn't find that one at all interesting.
What about Sailor Moon?
I remember watching Sailor Moon because that came on before Dragon Ball Z. So I remember watching that, and I was, that just whatever. Like, I would turn it on the TV waiting for Z to come on. That's the only reason that was. But no, I know nothing about Sailor Moon.
Well, that's okay. We have Hail Zeon for that. Now, I wanted to ask you about those. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was asking about the Toonami memories, bro. Like, we've talked about this.
Toonami is like. Toonami is if Toonami is the pit of my nostalgia. Like, if there's one thing that is more rich in my life of like nostalgia, nostalgia, it's Toonami. Toonami is the wealth of nostalgia in my life. I don't know what it is, man. Toonami made some of the most awesome promos that just stick in your head, and when you see them years later, you just get that fuzzy feeling inside.
It really gets you hyped. Like, for me, even though I was obviously a fan of the Japanese by the time that Toonami had aired Dragon Ball, at least when they got to the Frieza saga, regardless, it's still even though Dragon Ball helped Toonami and Cartoon Network break ratings records, and it was the biggest show on that network that whole decade, I feel like they did a lot for Dragon Ball because, like you talked about, the production behind these packages, and how the hell were they able to pull guys like Peter Cullen?
Peter Cullen has become an inspiration to me. I'm not
Don LaFontaine, bro.
Yeah, he's become an inspiration to me, the way he did his voiceovers during some of the Toonami promos. But I want to say something about nostalgia, though, because some more cynical people outside of the Dragon Ball fandom will claim that or at least some people will say that, we need to get out of our nostalgia. And I just want to say something.
Fuck off.
This is my well, in a much more nice and I think some way, because I think they're flat out wrong. They are flat out wrong when it comes to me, and I think they're flat out wrong when it comes to fans who are like me, because I don't have any nostalgia for Dragon Ball. I did at one point. The thing is, though, if you know anything about nostalgia, if you know anything about nostalgia, is that it doesn't last forever, and it's only temporary. You might be able to milk it for a long time, but it runs out. The thing is, I've been so exposed to Dragon Ball for so long that the nostalgia's gone. I'm still here not because of nostalgia, it's because I like the series, you know. So I still have nostalgia for Toonami, and I still have nostalgia for some of the other shows that were on there, like Rurouni Kenshin and Gundam Wing.
But the thing I
But,
just want to say one thing.
the reason I have nostalgia for them is because I'm not exposed to them like I am Toonami. I mean, not like I am Dragon Ball. I had nostalgia for Dragon Ball back in like 2005 and 7, but because I've been so exposed to it, it ran out, and I don't have any anymore. I legit don't have any more. So when people try to say to Dragon Ball fans that you're just living on nostalgia, I completely disagree because, yeah, maybe there are fans like that, but
But just to add to what you're saying, it's not. I mean, there are fans like that, but when you look at it objectively, the Toonami promo packages that Peter Cullen, Moltar, these were all quality packages. I can watch them now. Like, remember the Outlaw Star promo? Remember the Outlaw Star promo from Peter Cullen?
Yeah. There was so many. Of course, there's the Outlaw Star one. There was the Gundam Wing one. I mean, I could watch those now, and I probably will. Like, I watch those all the time. I could always come back to those. There was also the Rurouni Kenshin one, the Big O one, the what was it? The Universal Century Gundam one.
Do you remember, real quick? Do you remember how they would have the Dragon Ball Z character bios? Like, they would have Piccolo,
Goku, the world's strongest. Yeah, I remember that. That never fails to hype me up,
dude. Man. No, the best one they ever did, bro. See the show, The Wall Street Journal calls a huge cartoon hit.
Oh yeah,
Cartoon Network's got a new #1 show, and then you see all these clips.
And then you're just bringing me back. And then
I have that article, by the way, the Wall Street Journal article. I think I sent it to you.
Mr. Popo and I are very pleased.
Yeah. And then the thing about, dude, they had, you know what it was, bro? Cartoon Network, or whoever the fuck was in charge of this shit, they had such a style. Like, they just knew. I'll be honest, dude, they would get you more hyped for Dragon Ball or for any of this shit. I almost feel like if it wasn't for those promos, it wouldn't be as fun and exciting, in my opinion.
I think
it added to it, you know?
I've thought about a lot of this, but yes, I think that you can never replicate that because we have the internet, but
you can.
But in the pre-internet age, that Toonami stuff, man, I almost thought about it, and I think of all my memories, and I did think that, the way Toonami presented everything did add to the whole experience of just watching this stuff, because this stuff, obviously, even if you're not familiar with anime and Japanese, this Japanese stuff, when you see stuff like Rurouni Kenshin and Dragon Ball and Big O, Yu Yu Hakusho, you on a certain level, you understand that this is not like what's on the rest of the channel, like when you see Dexter's Laboratory or Ed, Edd n Eddy or whatever was on the channel.
That's why it had its own block. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When you watch this stuff, on some level, you kind of get that this is different. Just the way it's drawn, you could just tell this is a very different style. Whether you knew it was Japanese or not was something else. But the fact that it was different, and I think was the reason that Toonami did such a good job with it, because Toonami, because
they showed it respect. That's what you're trying to say.
Well, not necessarily respect, but because it was so different, they kind of capitalized on the fact that we know that to this American audience, it's going to be perceived differently. So we're going to capitalize on it by presenting it in a way that you never really see, cartoons or animation being presented back in the day. It was like you didn't see like Ed, Edd n Eddy or Powerpuff Girls or anything that was running back then presented in the way the Toonami shows were being presented, and they were being hyped up, you know?
And they had their own quality promos too, but there was something about Toonami ones, like, for example, some of my favorites, and we'll get to yours too. I love the movie commercials, the Don LaFontaine, and then the Cullen took over when LaFontaine was gone. Just the Dead Zone one, a new dark age has begun. And remember, I'm a fan of the sub, okay? Remember that. Yes. Especially back then, I was a super elitist sub fan. They came and kidnapped Gohan. They would steal a child for the key to immortality. Now they
Yeah,
must
yeah.
face his father.
Like, yeah,
Awesome, dude.
like I said before, Toonami is just a wealth of nostalgia for me.
But it's not just nostalgia, it's just quality stuff. Like, okay,
Oh yeah.
when they were first when they first got season 3, which was the Frieza saga, I'll never forget. I will never forget this. Well, first of all, I love the original promo where it was Moltar, it's time for a power trip. And it was just a bunch of explosions. But when they first got the Frieza saga, right, they showed, it was a very short promo. And because of the internet, I read that they got it. So it was a big deal. And it said, it showed like the end of the Raccoon episode, right? And you heard the ocean dub narrator, is Goku a Super Saiyan? And then it went black and white. And then all of a sudden on the screen it says, it's time for the second coming. Bam, 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 bam. You saw all these fucking clips of Goku fighting Captain Ginyu. I just about fell out of my chair, bro.
And that is something that you just can't replicate today.
They're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, exactly. You can't. It's in its time.
Dude, it's in its time, bro. Like, and like, just, and then they were like, finally, new Dragon Ball. And then I remember the big one was the Android Saga Season 4 intro, which is still my favorite one. Which is, it starts out with the screaming, get down, I'll make this whole planet suffer. No!
Yeah. That's probably the most famous one.
And remember, I was a fan of the sub.
And you know what? Over the years, I've just, because I've been editing these videos, just looking at how they edited all these together. I mean, they just had some slick editing on some of these, man.
And I love, like, when they were first advertising it, they were like, you've waited and you've got it. 77 new Dragon Balls. He's like, Trunks, Super Saiyans, androids, and a whole lot more. And they just showed you all these clips of stuff that, I mean, I was familiar with it because I had the bootleg, but I still was hyped. That's the thing. I had the fucking tapes, but they did such a good job that it still got me hyped for stuff that I already owned. It's weird.
Well,
it's just good production, dude.
Well, yeah, man.
I mean, what are some of your favorites that you remember, except for the ones that I already named? Do you have any other ones?
Man, there's okay. Well, obviously, you named some of my favorites, but I don't even know, like, some of the intros that they did. The World's Strongest promo, the one where they
Dr. Willow's.
Yeah, Dr. Willow. Yeah, that one, Dr. Willow. But pretty much almost anything that Peter Cullen was on. I mean, probably a lot of people's favorite is probably the Gundam Wing one because it was 2 minutes long. It was so good that Bandai wanted to use it for their own promotions. So, I mean, Peter Cullen's voice always kicks it out of the park. The Rurouni Kenshin one. I know I'm out of the Dragon Ball space.
That's okay.
But, the Rurouni Kenshin one's always...
Wait, didn't you tell me that you love the Frieza Saga rerun one? The intro?
Yes, the intro to the free... See, the...
Was that the one that ended with, it has begun?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
No. It ends... Because that's the regular run. The rerun's different. The rerun, the one main reason that I really liked that one was not because, first of all, it was just the editing and the music that they used in it. Toonami had a very good selection of music. I from what I understand, they got DJs to do their music for them, and that also created a very good atmosphere for everything that Toonami did, and especially in all the videos that they produced, and some of that music that they use, I still listen to this day. I really like some of that Deep Space bass, which was, I think, the only. Right. I think it was the only album that they released of that music.
And it's been so influential for you because you took beautiful friends from around the world. From, what was his name, the robot?
Tom.
Yeah, wasn't there like 3 different Toms? I'm trying to remember.
There's 4. There's the bowling ball Tom. Then there's the slim one, then the buff one, you could say, and then the one with the face. But yeah, beautiful friends from around the world. That comes from I took the beautiful friends from Tom when he first when Toonami was canceled, and he's like, well, this is the end, beautiful friends, and I just took that and I was like, well, what about beautiful friends from around the world? And that's where I got that phrase.
It's crazy, man. It's just, I'll tell you what, it's been fun going down memory lane with you. These kind of times, bro, it really puts into perspective about how fast life is because
Yeah, I was about to just say how it just puts in perspective how old you are now.
especially me. No, but it's like I remember this like it was yesterday, coming home from school. And I know there's people listening to this who know what we're talking about. You come home from school and you just watch all this fucking anime when it was still fresh, before it got, the anime industry's kind of hopping. I don't know. How would you feel if Funimation did get the rights to Super, and if we saw Toonami-esque promos on Cartoon Network for the dub of Super? Do you think it would capture the same feeling? I think they could if they had the same people working on it.
Well, the thing is, I think that when Super gets on American television, it's going to do pretty good regardless of where it is going to air. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious,
I almost
right?
feel like it would fit better on
with
Toonami than
with
Nickelodeon.
Resurrection F's. I'm just saying. I'm just gonna, just I guess from more of like a business standpoint. I mean, for Resurrections F, for the reception that it got here, I was, immediately I started thinking, maybe if Toei Animation didn't have, their lower orifice up there, you know what?
Oh boy!
But
Get ready, you're about to get a strike for that one.
oh boy! But
Number 6.
yeah, but if Toei Animation, maybe could do, could just make a business run a lot more smooth, they could have Super running here, at least simulcasting, or at least having Funimation maybe just probably letting them air it already on TV, because I know that Funimation wants to air this stuff as soon as possible. And if they could air that stuff right now, I'm pretty sure it would do really good. Just gauging it from how good Resurrection F did here in the States. So if they started to do it with Toonami promos, I think that would only add to everything, because of course that's going to harken back. That's something like
now
that.
Now you're really doing nostalgia.
You are targeting that fan base. You know what I mean? That large group of people. One thing I noticed that there is a lot of new fans out there, right? But if you there's a lot of new fans out there that probably are going to watch some of this the Super regardless, because they watched Kai and everything. But if you target that if you do something like Toonami promos for Super, you're specifically targeting some of those people that might take interest in it that haven't taken interest before. So I feel like that only would help it out. But regardless, Super, I think, would do great on American television right now, honestly, because I think the atmosphere for Dragon Ball is great.
They got to hurry up and get this thing going at least by January, at least.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that we don't have any simulcast, because a lot of other animes have it, and how is it that Dragon Ball Super doesn't have it? It's very disappointing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. That you won't get an argument from me. Well, Blackenfist, thank you for coming on and going down memory lane with me here on Icons of the Dragon Ball community. And before we go, man, I want to talk about kind of your goals. You told me that one of your goals in life is to create a documentary about Dragon Ball. Is that your dream, to like make a real like Discovery Channel documentary about the impact of this franchise?
Well, hopefully I'm not LARPing too much, but but no, yes, like I'm being serious. Like I've looked at all my body of work of these videos, and I've thought, what is this eventually going to lead up to? I don't, and I felt like, what, I've already spent so much time, and I plan to spend so much more time doing these videos, that I think that it should all lead up to a documentary about Dragon Ball, because you know what? No one else has done it, and I think Dragon Ball definitely deserves one. Now, I obviously don't have the skills yet. I don't have any of this, so I'm not saying, oh, I'm working on it right now.
That's your dream.
It's not in production. Exactly. This is my dream. This is something that I think will come down a couple years down the line, but eventually, yes, I would want to produce a Dragon Ball documentary,
And
bring
the
all the
Falconer
pieces
interview,
together.
the Falconer interview was step one, really, in many ways.
Well, the Falconer interview was it definitely helped, because I don't know how this documentary is going to be structured, but obviously we're going to want to interview people. If I can, I would obviously want to interview people from the Japanese side of things. If that's, I know that sounds absolutely insane right now, but yes, trying to interview some of them would probably be extremely
It's
hard. But
gonna require a lot of networking.
yeah, but interviewing the English side of things, I think could be done a lot more, feasible. Because practically getting Falconer and Sabit, I think will be much those guys will be a lot simpler than on the Japanese side of things. But obviously, this documentary you would need interviews, and I guess that's just like almost like just like a training ground, you could say, for me.
Yeah, because you want this thing to be like an authentic, real doc, not just a view of the dub. You want to
Yes.
you want to get like your dream is like to get Nozawa and Yamamuro and people who actually made.
Well, that's
this
it. Yeah,
thing.
that's the dream. That's the dream. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's funny is that we kind of, yourself and QAAMAN and Mr. Fusion and myself and a few others, we kind of make little mini documentaries on YouTube, and it'll be good to see that project once. I mean, it's going to take time and a lot of work, but it'll be good to see a project like that really happen if it ever does. I certainly hope it does, and some assholes just do it before you. We'll sue. We'll sue. We have a record of it now.
No, well, you know what? If someone else does it, if they do a fine job, you know what? I'll probably enjoy it with everyone else.
That's right. Go ahead.
But hey, Dragon Ball is big enough for maybe 2 documentaries, right? If that happens, right?
I mean, dude, the people versus Akira Toriyama. That's what it's going to be called with the damn super thing. The people versus Akira Toriyama. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Everybody check out Blackenfist on YouTube. I have the link down below. Check out Thought for Talk and check out his discussions. He seems to be obsessed about fathers in Dragon Ball lately. I can't wait to see his Vegeta, a good father. That's up next.
I guess I have been talking about that lately, haven't I?
That's your thing, but it's funny because you are Mexican, and anybody who knows anything about Mexicans know that Mexicans love their children, so that has to be part of it.
I suppose, man.
Dude, I'll tell you one thing. This is my advice to everybody out there who's young. If you're gonna date a Mexican girl who has a kid, and she has and the baby daddy is Mexican, you are in trouble. Because if you come close to that kid, you might get stabbed. I know from experience. That's all I'm gonna say. They really protect their children. But anyways, thanks and hey, thanks everybody for checking out the interview, and we'll see you next time. And I'll catch your ass down the road.